I am John Walker, an ordinary man with an ordinary life. But everything changed one autumn night when I discovered that my wife, Emily, was cheating on me. Everything changed forever. Just yesterday, we were happy, or at least I thought so. Emily and I had a complete marriage with two wonderful kids, Jack and Lucy. But everything shifted when Emily started working overtime at the marketing company where she worked. I had no reason to suspect her because I loved her. But there are things you can't ignore forever and signs you can't hide. I started noticing strange messages on her phone, late nights when she had to stay at the office, and frequent outings to meet old friends, not just once, but repeatedly. Then there were the calls she always quickly hung up on when I walked into the room. These signs kept repeating, and I couldn't help but suspect something. But I didn't act right away. I am John Walker, an ordinary man with an ordinary life. But everything changed one autumn night when I discovered that my wife Emily was cheating on me. Everything changed forever. Just yesterday, we were happy, or at least I thought so. Emily and I had a complete marriage with two wonderful kids, Jack and Lucy. But everything shifted when Emily started working overtime at the marketing company where she worked. I had no reason to suspect her because I loved her. But there are things you can't ignore forever and signs you can't hide. I started noticing strange messages on her phone, late nights when she had to stay at the office, and frequent outings to meet old friends, not just once, but repeatedly. Then there were the calls she always quickly hung up on when I walked into the room. These signs kept repeating, and I couldn't help but suspect something, but I didn't act right away. It wasn't until that one cold night in October when everything came to a head. I had been sitting on the edge of my suspicions for weeks, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination running wild. But deep down, I knew. I had to know for sure. I came home early that evening, something I rarely did. I wanted to surprise Emily, maybe even cook dinner for us, show her that I cared, that I was still the same husband who cherished our family. But when I walked through the door, something felt off. The house was eerily quiet, which was unusual with the kids usually running around, playing, or watching TV. I called out for Emily, but heard no response. Then I noticed her phone on the kitchen counter. It was unlocked. That was strange. Emily was always careful with her phone, always holding it close, like a shield. I couldn't resist. I picked it up. The screen flashed a new message, and instinctively I opened it. My heart sank as I read the words, the sting of betrayal cutting deeper than I ever imagined. I can't wait to see you tonight. I've missed you. XOXO. The sender was Alec. I froze. Alec. I knew the name. Emily had mentioned him a few times, always in passing, as a coworker. But something about the way the message was phrased made my stomach churn. This wasn't just a friendly coworker chat. I could feel the weight of the lie in every word. I wanted to confront her then and there, but I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. Something in me wanted to keep pretending that everything was okay, to hope this was all some mistake. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The kids came home soon after, and I pushed all my emotions down, forcing a smile as I greeted them. But that night, when Emily finally came home, I was a shell of the man who had kissed her goodbye that morning. She stepped through the door, smiling as usual, but the smile faltered when she saw me standing in the kitchen. "John?" Her voice was laced with unease. "What are you doing home so early?" I didn't answer her immediately. I just stared at her, and for the first time in years, I saw her not as my wife, but as a stranger. "Who's Alec?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but carrying the weight of 1,000 emotions. Her face turned pale. "John, what are you talking about?" I didn't need to hear her lie. I had already heard it in her messages, the tone of her voice. The truth hung between us, thick and suffocating. For the first time in my life, I had no idea what came next. Emily stood there, frozen, her eyes darting around as though searching for an escape. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her purse, the usual confidence in her posture replaced by something that looked too much like fear. She was caught. "John, I can explain," she stammered, but I could hear the shakiness in her voice. I wanted to let her speak, to hear her version of things, but the words I had been holding back for so long were suddenly rushing to the surface. "Explain? How do you explain this?" I held up her phone, the screen still open to the message from Alec. "Tell me this is a misunderstanding. Tell me this isn't real." Her eyes flickered to the phone, and I saw the way her expression faltered. She was going to lie, and it was only a matter of how. "John, it's not what you think," she said, her voice now gaining a little more strength, but there was no conviction in it. "Alec is just a coworker, and this is all just harmless flirting. Doesn't mean anything. Please, you have to believe me." I couldn't help the laugh that escaped my lips, a bitter, hollow sound. "Harmless flirting? You think this is harmless?" I shook my head, my heart heavy with anger, betrayal, and something I couldn't quite place. Was it sadness? Or was it the crushing weight of the realization that my marriage, the life I thought I had, was nothing but a lie? She reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. The distance between us now felt insurmountable. "How long, Emily?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "How long has this been going on?" She looked down at the floor, her shoulders slumping. She was ashamed, and yet her silence spoke volumes. I didn't need her to answer. I could already see the truth in her eyes. I took a step back. "I want you to leave." "I can't do this. Not now. Not with you." The words felt like they were being torn out of me, each one heavier than the last. Her face crumpled as if I had struck her, and I watched as the woman I once knew, the woman I once loved, fell apart. "John, please don't do this." "I'll fix it. We can fix it. Please don't leave me." Her voice cracked, and it broke something inside me. I wanted to hold her, to tell her everything would be okay, that this was just a bad dream. But it wasn't. I couldn't ignore the feeling in my gut, the quiet whisper in my mind that told me this was the end. "You've already left, Emily," I said softly. "You just don't know it yet." With that, I turned away and walked out of the room, not bothering to look back. There was nothing left to say. The damage had been done. My heart felt like it was in a million pieces, but I was too numb to feel the pain. The next morning, I woke up early, the empty space beside me in bed, a stark reminder of the night before. Emily hadn't slept in the house. She had gone. I didn't know where. The silence in the house was suffocating. Jack and Lucy were still asleep, blissfully unaware of the storm that had broken in our home. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the remnants of the life I had once cherished. The quiet hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock on the wall seemed louder than ever. And then the phone rang. It was Emily. I couldn't bring myself to answer it, not yet. Instead, I let it ring, the harsh sound echoing through the empty space of the room. It wasn't the first time I had been betrayed, but it was the first time I'd seen the truth so clearly. The truth that sometimes the ones you love most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. The question now was, what was I going to do with this truth? The phone stopped ringing, but the silence that followed was suffocating. I didn't know what I expected from Emily at this point. Some grand apology? A heartfelt confession? But what was left to say? What did I even want from her? I couldn't make sense of any of it. I took a deep breath and stood up, pacing around the kitchen. The sunlight filtering through the window seemed so distant, as if it was shining on a different world, one where I was still just John Walker, the ordinary man with an ordinary life. But that life was slipping away from me, and I couldn't grasp onto it, no matter how hard I tried. I thought about the kids, Jack and Lucy. They were still so young, so innocent. They didn't deserve to be caught in the fallout of their mother's mistakes. I could feel the weight of their smiles, of the moments we'd shared, and it was all slipping through my fingers. Just then, my phone buzzed. I didn't have to look to know who it was. Emily again. She wasn't giving up, and part of me admired her for it, even if I didn't want to face her. I grabbed the phone and hesitated before swiping to answer. Emily. John, please. I know I messed up. Her voice was quieter this time, like she was losing her usual composure. But we need to talk. We can fix this. I love you. I swear it was a mistake. Alec, it was a mistake. I closed my eyes, trying to breathe through the anger that rose in my chest. The calm in my voice surprised even me when I spoke again. You love me? Is that what you think? That after everything, after the lies and betrayal, you can just say you love me and everything will go back to normal? There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment I thought she might hang up. But then her voice came, small and shaky. I'm sorry, John. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't. I didn't realize how much I had put us all at risk. But I can't just lose you. I can't lose our family. We can fix this. Her words were desperate. But the more she spoke, the more I felt myself pulling away, retreating into a place where her voice couldn't reach me. I don't know if we can fix it, Emily, I said, the words tasting foreign on my tongue. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. I felt the weight of that sentence settle in my chest. Saying it out loud made it real, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that. Part of me wanted to fight for us, wanted to believe that this was just a bump in the road, that we could work through it. But another part of me, the part that had been ignored for so long, was already mourning the death of everything I thought I knew. The conversation ended without any resolution. Emily wanted to meet, but I couldn't bring myself to face her, not yet. I needed time to think, to process, to figure out what my next step would be. The betrayal was too raw, and it was still fresh, too fresh to forgive, too fresh to forget. Later that day, I found myself staring at the front door, wondering if I was making the right choice. Could I truly walk away from her, from everything we had built together? Was this the end of a chapter I had once thought was perfect? As night approached, I sat down with Jack and Lucy, trying to keep things as normal as possible for them. They didn't need to see the storm brewing in my mind. They didn't need to know the war going on inside me. When they asked about Mommy, I simply said she was out. But the uncertainty was growing. and it was becoming harder to hide the cracks in our family. After dinner, as I tucked Jack and Lucy into bed, I kissed them both on the forehead, wondering if they would ever be the same again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the events of the past few days, feeling like I was trapped in a loop of endless pain and confusion. I wanted to reach out to Emily, but I also wanted to let her go. I wanted answers, but part of me feared the answers more than I feared living with the unknown. As I lay there in the dark, I made a decision. I was going to take control of my life again. No more second guessing. No more wondering if I was making the right choices. I would confront Emily one last time, lay everything out on the table, and see if there was any hope left. And if there wasn't, then I would walk away for good. But as I reached for my phone to call her, a new message popped up. It was from Alec. "John, we need to talk. It's not just Emily. There's something you don't know." I stared at the message, my fingers frozen over the phone screen. "There's something you don't know." The words lingered in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and menacing. I could feel the blood draining from my face, my heart pounding faster in my chest. What could Alec possibly have to say to me? I had imagined every possible confrontation with Emily, every lie, every tear, every word of remorse. But this was new. Alec had crossed a line by reaching out to me directly. It was one thing for him to hide behind the messages Emily had sent, but now he was coming forward. I hesitated for a moment, then with shaky hands, I typed a simple reply. "What is this about?" The response came almost instantly. "Meet me. Tomorrow, 9 p.m. I'll explain everything." I didn't know what I was expecting, but something about the urgency in his message made my gut twist. Why couldn't he just tell me now? What could be so important? I stared at the message and then at the blank walls of the living room. It was like the world had shifted again, and now I was being asked to step into a new chapter, one I wasn't ready for, but couldn't ignore. I glanced at the clock. It was late, but sleep wasn't coming. I knew I needed to face this, but a part of me, a small voice deep inside, wanted to ignore it and pretend everything was fine. I could just call Emily in the morning, tell her I wanted to work things out, and maybe, just maybe, she'd beg for forgiveness. But that small voice was drowned out by the growing sound of my doubts. I sent Alec a quick reply. "Where?" A few minutes passed, and then another message popped up. "You know the old pier, the one by the lake. I'll be waiting." The pier. My mind raced back to a time long ago, before the weight of all this pain, when Emily and I had visited that spot as teenagers. We had sat there, watching the sunset, dreaming of the future. I used to think that place held all the hope we would ever need. Now, it felt like a place where something dark was about to unfold. I lay down in bed, but sleep wouldn't come. The kids were sound asleep in their rooms, oblivious to the shifting sands of their family. How would I explain all this to them? How would I ever look them in the eyes if everything fell apart? The hours passed, and the knot in my stomach tightened. I knew that tomorrow night, everything would change again. Either Alec would tell me something that would shatter what little remained of my trust in Emily, or he would tell me something that would change everything I thought I knew about her. Either way, it felt like there would be no going back. The next evening, I drove to the lake, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than they should have. The sky had already darkened, and the wind coming off the water made the trees sway like shadows, their branches creaking and whispering. I parked by the old pier, the same one Emily and I had once laughed on, back when we were young and carefree. Now, it felt like the last place I wanted to be. I stepped out of the car, the sound of my footsteps muffled by the wet ground. The air was thick with anticipation, and the only sound was the lapping of water against the pier. I scanned the area, but there was no sign of Alec. Then I heard a rustling sound behind me, the distinct echo of footsteps in the dark. I turned quickly. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was Alec, his face partially hidden by the brim of his cap. He was taller than I expected, his frame broad, but his posture was tense, like he was just as nervous as I was. His eyes were hard to read, but they flickered with something a secret perhaps, or a weight he carried that I couldn't yet understand. He took a step toward me, and then another. "John," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I didn't want you to find out this way, but things got out of hand." "We didn't plan for this." "Plan for what?" I asked, barely able to control the frustration in my voice. "What do you want from me, Alec?" He paused, glancing over his shoulder like he expected someone else to be there. But no one else was. It was just us and the dark, empty pier. He took a deep breath before continuing. "It wasn't just an affair, John. It wasn't about Emily. It was about something much bigger." He hesitated again, and I could see his jaw tighten. "You've been in the dark about all of this." "About her. About us." "Us?" I echoed, the word a cold shock running through my body. "What do you mean, use?" Alex stepped closer, lowering his voice even more, as though what he was about to say could shatter the world as I knew it. "Emily wasn't just cheating on you with me, John. She was involved in something dangerous, and she didn't want you to find out. But she couldn't keep it hidden anymore. I don't know how much longer she can keep it together." I felt the ground beneath my feet shift. "What the hell are you talking about?" I demanded, stepping closer to him, my mind scrambling to make sense of his words. "Emily's been working with people from her company," Alec explained. "But it's not just marketing, John. There's something far deeper happening. I was supposed to be the buffer, keep things from getting out of hand. But they're getting dangerous, and she's in too deep. I'm trying to protect her. I'm trying to protect all of us." The weight of his words hit me like a punch to the gut. My mind raced to process it, but I couldn't. Emily wasn't just caught up in a simple affair. There was something more, something far darker, and Alec was right in the middle of it all. I wanted answers, but now all I could feel was the overwhelming sense that I had no idea who my wife really was anymore. I stood there frozen, trying to absorb what Alec had just said. His words were a blur, bouncing around in my mind like a storm that wouldn't settle. Emily, my Emily, wasn't just cheating on me. She was tangled in something far more dangerous, something that went beyond infidelity. The implications of what Alec was saying were too overwhelming to grasp all at once. "Dangerous?" I asked, my voice shaky. "What are you talking about? What kind of dangerous?" Alex shifted uncomfortably, glancing around again as if expecting someone to jump out from the shadows. His eyes were wide, full of fear now, the kind of fear you can't fake. "I don't have all the answers, John. But Emily. She's been involved with some shady people at her company. People who aren't just about making money. They're into something much bigger, something more, underground." I stepped back, my mind scrambling. This doesn't make sense. Emily's just a marketing manager. She's not involved in anything like that. This is some kind of joke, right? Some game you're playing? Alex shook his head, his expression hardening. "You think I'm joking? I'm trying to warn you, John. Emily's been keeping things from you for months, maybe even longer. I don't know the full story, but I know it's bad. I don't even know if I can protect her anymore. These people, they won't stop. They'll do whatever it takes to get what they want. My pulse quickened as the weight of his words settled deeper into me. What do they want? I asked, barely able to get the words out. Alec hesitated, looking over his shoulder again, his voice dropping even lower. That's the part I don't know. But I think Emily knows. She's scared, John. She's terrified of what they'll do if she tries to get out. And that's why she's been acting the way she has. The late nights, the secrecy. It wasn't just about the affair. She was trying to keep you safe, trying to keep you in the dark. She didn't want you to get hurt. I stood there, my mind reeling. Every part of me wanted to scream, to demand more answers, but the fear in Alec's eyes was enough to keep me grounded. He wasn't just some accomplice in a messy affair. He was scared too. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about something much darker. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, the frustration bubbling up now. Why did you wait until now? Why meet me here, in the middle of the night? Why not go to the police? If this is as dangerous as you say, we need to do something about it. Alec's face twisted with regret, his hands balling into fists. I wanted to, believe me. I tried, but I can't trust anyone anymore. You don't know what these people are capable of. They have eyes everywhere. I didn't want to put you or your kids at risk. Emily didn't want to either. Where is she, Alec? I demanded, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and panic. Is she in danger right now? Should I be worried about her? He hesitated again before answering, his eyes clouded with guilt. She's trying to figure out how to get out. She knows she can't keep lying to you. But if she comes to you, John, if she admits everything, she'll put herself and you at risk. These people don't just let people walk away. If she exposes them, it'll be the end of her, and probably the end of you too. I stood there, the wind whipping around me, each word cutting deeper than the last. I felt like I was being dragged into a nightmare, a world I never signed up for, one where nothing was what it seemed. And the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with everything, was at the center of it all. Do you really think she'll come clean? After everything that's happened? I asked, my voice thick with disbelief. How can I trust her again, Alec? She's lied to me for months, and now you're telling me she's involved with dangerous people. How am I supposed to believe any of this? Alec's expression softened, as though he could sense the hurt and confusion in my voice. I'm not asking you to forgive her, John. I'm asking you to understand. She's been caught in something she can't control. She loves you, but she's scared. I can't promise that things will go back to normal. But if you want to help her, if you want to protect her and your family, you need to make a decision. You need to decide what you're going to do with this knowledge. I stared at him, the weight of the decision settling on my shoulders. I had always thought that betrayal was the worst thing that could happen in a marriage. But now, I was faced with something much more complicated, something that threatened not just my trust, but my entire family's safety. Why should I believe you? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. How do I know you're not just trying to cover your own ass? How do I know you're not part of this mess? Alec's eyes flashed with anger, but he quickly controlled it. I'm telling you everything I know because I care about Emily. I'm trying to help her, and I'm trying to help you. I never wanted any of this to happen, but now that it's out, you have to make a choice. Do you let this ruin your family, or do you fight for it? I felt the walls closing in around me. This was no longer about forgiveness. It was no longer about saving a marriage. It was about survival. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to step into the world Alec was offering me, a world of shadows, lies, and danger. But I had no choice. "Where is she?" I asked again, this time with more urgency. "Tell me where she is." Alec hesitated, then gave me a small nod. "She's hiding, but you have to act fast. If you wait too long, it might be too late." I didn't have time to process everything. I just knew one thing. I had to find Emily before it was too late. And whatever the truth was, I was about to face it head on. I stood there, the cold breeze biting through my jacket, the weight of Alec's words hanging in the air. He had given me a choice, but there was no easy answer. There were no guarantees, no simple path forward. It wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about something much bigger. But I couldn't ignore what was right in front of me. The shattered trust, the lies, the unrecognizable woman I thought I knew. The decision was excruciating, but the truth was clear. I had tried to hold on. I had tried to believe in the possibility of repair, of a second chance. But the cracks were too deep. The foundation of our life together had been torn apart, not just by an affair, but by secrets I couldn't ever untangle. I looked at Alec one last time. My eyes hardened with resolve. "I'll find her," I said, my voice steady, though every inch of me was trembling inside. "But once I do, it ends. We're done." Alec nodded, a mix of regret and understanding in his gaze. He knew what that meant. He didn't try to stop me. There was nothing left to say. The next few days were a blur. I found Emily hiding in a small apartment, miles from the home we once shared. Her face was pale, her eyes tired and filled with something I couldn't name. The woman I had loved, the woman I thought I knew, was gone. What was left was someone who had betrayed me, who had made decisions that weren't just reckless but dangerous. We didn't speak much at first. There was nothing to say. The air between us was thick with all the words we couldn't express. When I finally did speak, it was simple. It was a cold, matter-of-fact declaration of what I had known for some time, but had been too afraid to admit. "I can't do this anymore, Emily. I can't live in this lie. You've broken my trust, and I don't know if I can ever rebuild it." She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She didn't apologize in the way I expected. She just nodded, as if the weight of everything had finally caught up with her. Maybe she had known it was coming. Maybe, deep down, she had always known. That night, I went home. The house that had once been our sanctuary now felt like a prison. The kids were asleep in their rooms, unaware of the storm that had passed through their world. I sat in the living room, the emptiness settling around me. The love that had once filled these walls was gone, replaced by silence. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and meetings with lawyers. Emily didn't fight me. She didn't contest anything. I don't know if she was too exhausted to care anymore, or if she knew that we were beyond repair. The divorce was final within a month. The life we had built together, the family I had dreamed of, was over. I moved out of the house into a small apartment just a few blocks away. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I wasn't sure where I would go from here, but I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't go back. Not to the life we had before, not to the lie we had built. There was no going back from the truth. The kids, Jack and Lucy, were the hardest part. I loved them more than anything in this world, and I knew I had to protect them from the pain that was bubbling beneath the surface. They deserved better than this fractured family, but I promised myself I would be there for them, always, even if it meant sacrificing the person I once was. As for Emily, I don't know what happened to her after that. She kept to herself, kept away from me and the kids. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the way I had been in the beginning. I was just tired of the lies, tired of the betrayal, and tired of trying to make something work that was never meant to. Months passed. Slowly, I started rebuilding, piece by piece. I found new routines, new joys, new moments of peace. I found strength I didn't know I had. The wounds didn't heal overnight, but they began to fade. The life I thought I had lost, the family I thought I would never have again, began to find its way back in unexpected ways. One day, as I walked through the park with Jack and Lucy, watching them laugh and chase each other, I realized something. The family I had lost wasn't gone forever. It had changed, yes. It was different now, but it was still mine. We were still a family. It just looked different than I had imagined, and that was okay. And as for Emily, well, I had to let go. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, but sometimes you have to let go of the person you love to save yourself. The divorce was final, but it wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something new, something I wasn't sure I was ready for, but something I had to face. And with that, I took a step forward, knowing that whatever came next, I would be okay. And so I moved on.